Oh, what is going on, football fans? Back at it with another New York Giants video. Bit of a late upload for you guys tonight. This was really the only time that I could do it. I tried to do a video earlier. I think there's a problem with StreamYard because it doesn't seem to be working. So I figured I'd upload a video on OBS, and this was my only opportunity to be able to do it. So hopefully you guys see this if you're going to bed or when you wake up in the morning as you get my opinion on Daniel Jones and some of the things that have been said about Daniel Jones in the national media, mainly ESPN, mainly Dan Orlovsky, some of the things that he had to say about your quarterback. And I wanted to touch on and talk about the way that he's performed through 7 weeks and kind of talk about where I think Daniel Jones is headed as the New York Giants quarterback, the most polarizing figure, arguably in New York sports. You know, when you talk about playing the quarterback position, the most important position on a football team in New York, I don't feel like there's a more polarizing figure in New York sports since I've been a fan, whether it be basketball, football, baseball, whatever else it may be. Eli Manning dealt with this his entire career. Daniel Jones, as long as he stays on as the New York Giants quarterback, will have to deal with this for the remainder of his career. You're going to have people that are polar opposites when it comes to the quarterback, and rightfully so. There's reasons coming into the year to be doubtful, and there's also reasons to be somewhat hopeful. And I'll talk about all that in this video coming into the year. Thus far through this year, I don't know how you could be, if you're being unbiased with yourself, that you can't be hopeful for the future of Daniel Jones and the future of this New York Giants football team. We'll talk more about what Orlovsky had to say and everything else, and some of the things that you guys may say that are watching this video that still have not changed your opinion on the future of Daniel Jones and the future of him potentially being the starting quarterback for this New York Giants football team after 2022. Listen, I'll be the first to say, not my proudest moment on YouTube. I'm glad it happened. It was a mistake, and I learned from it, much like Saquon Barkley, hopefully learned from stepping out of bounds last week, which I know he will. He's the man. He'll be fine. I'm not proud of my draft night reaction. I'm happy it happened because a lot of you guys probably would have never found my channel, and it was raw emotion. It was how I felt on draft night, and I bought in to the national media. You know, when I first started YouTube, I didn't take this super seriously. I was having fun on YouTube, and I bought into the national media. I bought into the whole Duke thing, the quarterback, and in reality, I should have been much more patient. I should have given Jones an opportunity before I went nuts, like 95% of the fan base, if we're being honest with ourselves on draft night, that hated the draft pick. And up until this year, it was at least looking like 95% of the fan base was going to be proven right, whether it was Daniel Jones' fault or whether it wasn't. But through 7 weeks, Daniel Jones looks like he's going to prove a lot of people wrong. And I've said it all along after my draft reaction. I hope I'm the poster child for the biggest fool in the New York Giants fan base. I would much rather put the team above my opinion when it comes to a football player. And I've since adopted Daniel Jones. And if he's not my favorite player on the team, he's among my favorite players on the team. Because each and every week, it reminds me more and more and more of Eli Manning. Not talking about him as a player, talking about the way that he is received from the national media, the way he is received from portions of this fan base that go out of their way to knock this guy for any little thing that he does and go out of their way to move the goalposts to better suit their argument to go against Daniel Jones. And that's the way it's been since he started here, whether it be Dan Orlovsky or whether it just be members of this fan base or members of fans from throughout the league. I think we could all remember the nicknames in Daniel Jones' rookie year when people called him Danny Fumbles, Danny Turnovers, and that was the big knock because they couldn't really knock much else. He threw 24 touchdowns in his rookie year, which at the time was like, top 3, 4 all-time for a rookie quarterback. He had 4 games where he threw 4 touchdowns, but people picked on the turnovers. Rightfully so. He had 19 fumbles in his rookie year. He threw 12 interceptions. I think he lost 11 or 12. I think he lost 12 fumbles. So he had 24 turnovers in 12 games. Can't happen. But not crazy for a rookie, right? But in the microwave age of sports takes and just everything in general, people are quick to react. People are quick to judge. That's just the way the world works now. Second year, Jones dials back the turnovers, but obviously becomes a lot more conservative. I think due in large part to Joe Judge and Jason Garrett. And the same thing could be said the third year. Now in his fourth year, starting to improve a lot. But now you're hearing other reasons. People are moving the goalposts. People are changing their arguments. Things that you constantly heard about Daniel Jones early on in his career. Turns the ball over a lot. Doesn't win games. Can't find ways to win games. He's not the guy. He's not a winner. Well, now he's winning games, and now he's not turning the football over. Right now, Daniel Jones has the second, only 2 quarterbacks that have started since the beginning of the year have less fumbles than Daniel Jones. So you can't use that talking point anymore. He has 19 fumbles since his rookie year. He had 19 fumbles in his rookie year. So you can't use that argument anymore. He's dramatically improved in that area. So you haven't heard that from the deterrents, the detractors regarding Daniel Jones. People are no longer using that argument. What they're using now is that he's a game manager, that the team is winning in spite of Daniel Jones, which was kind of, said by Dan Orlovsky in so many words, right? He basically said, I think he mentioned Saquon Barkley by name, he mentioned the head coach by name, and he mentioned the defense by name. One thing that I constantly heard when people were bashing Daniel Jones, I'm not sure if Dan Orlovsky was included in this, was his record. And it was the same thing with Eli Manning. And I constantly said that it's a team stat. No such thing as a quarterback stat when it comes to wins and losses. Football's the ultimate team game. The quarterback's only out on the field 50% of the time, and probably 30 to 40% of the time he's handing the ball off. So there's only so much a quarterback could do. If the team is absolutely atrocious, it's going to be hard for him to win football games. But for all the people that destroyed Daniel Jones in terms of his record, in terms of his inability to win football games, despite the fact that he was on an atrocious football team, they can no longer say that. He's 8-2 in his last 10 games. He's beaten Aaron Rodgers. He's beaten Lamar Jackson. He's beaten Trevor Lawrence. He's beaten Jalen Hurts, and he's beaten Carr over that time span. So you can no longer use the win-loss thing. So they can't use the turnovers. They can't lose the win-loss. So what does Dan Orlovsky do? What do the fans do? They go to the game manager thing. Okay, first let's talk about what Dan Orlovsky had to say about Daniel Jones. Orlovsky came out and said, outside of the fact that he talked about how they're winning, and basically in spite of him, he said that Daniel Jones only threw one pass in the fourth quarter, and he's only thrown 44 passes this year in the fourth quarter, which is roughly about 6.5 passing attempts per game. Well, Dan, this past week, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, and he kind of left this context out when he talked about Daniel Jones. The reason why he only had one pass attempt. The reason why he only had one pass attempt was because in the first half, he threw for 170 yards when the Jacksonville Jaguars were stacking the box, and he forced them to change their defensive philosophy. So at halftime, Brian Daboll, like he always does, made halftime adjustments. Daniel Jones, who was doing great in terms of pre-snap adjustments, pre-snap reads, saw that the defense was letting up a little bit in terms of stacking the box because they knew that they had to guard against the pass, being that Daniel Jones was on pace to throw for 340 yards at halftime. And Daniel Jones, like any good quarterback would do, took what the defense gave him, meaning he used his legs, meaning that he used his legs and Saquon Barkley's legs to take that game over. The New York Giants rushed for 236 yards. And yes, well, the New York Giants and Daniel Jones only had one pass attempt in the fourth quarter, even though there was another pass attempt that would have been a touchdown probably had it not been for a pass interference to Darius Slayton, but we'll ignore that. In the corner of the end zone, Jones still led the team down the field. Jones had over 40 yards rushing on the go-ahead touchdown drive. And on the last drive, you were trying to chew up clock. Why in the world would you ever throw when he had the ability to just keep handing off to Saquon Barkley the way that we were running the football? So to me, it's just a lot of talking points. And to me, unfortunately, that's what ESPN has become. It's become a bunch of talking heads who decide that they're going to get into debates before they even roll the cameras. And it's almost like it's a script, like you're watching a movie. And Dan Orlovsky plays the part of the detractor, and Rex Ryan plays the part of the guy that's going to stick up for the quarterback, and they get into a pre-scripted debate. That's what it felt like to me. That's what it often feels like to me on ESPN. I think that's why a lot of you guys watch my channel and several other people's channels on YouTube. Dan Orlovsky, to me, comes across as a guy that had an opinion of Daniel Jones when he came into the league and is unwilling to change his opinion based off of the way that Daniel Jones has played. At the end of the day, Daniel Jones has 5 game-winning drives, and he has something to do with that, being that, the quarterback is the most important position on a football team. His team is 6-1. And let's jump into a couple of stats. I hear a lot of people like Orlovsky talk about Daniel Jones' stats. Well, part of the reason why his stats are the way that they are is because he has no one to throw to. He's throwing to a bunch of practice squad wide receivers. Let's be honest with ourselves, okay? He's not throwing to the same wide receivers that Jalen Hurts is throwing to. He's not throwing to A.J. Brown. He's not throwing to Devontae Smith. He's not throwing to Tyreek Hill. He's not throwing to Jalen Waddle. He's throwing to Richie James and David Sills. Okay, that's who he's throwing to. So to me, for everybody that says that Daniel Jones is a game manager, I disagree. I think he's in a situation where he is forced to be a game manager. And Brian Daboll knows that that is the only way to be able to win football games. I bet you anything, Mr. Orlovsky, and any Giants fan doubting Daniel Jones in terms of him being able to put up better stats and being more of a thrower of the football, that if we got ourselves a true number one wide receiver and this offensive line continues to evolve, Daniel Jones will be putting up much better stats. But let's jump into some of the stats. Here's the stats for first round carries by runners throughout the NFL. Daniel Jones is third in the NFL. He's tied with Lamar Jackson with 29. Ahead of his teammate, actually, Saquon Barkley has 28. Combined, they have 57 first downs on the ground. Doesn't seem like a game manager to me. It just seems like he's a dual threat quarterback, a guy that's on pace to rush for over 800 yards, a guy that is converting at a very high rate on third down, which we're going to get into in a minute. Then we'll jump into this stat. We talk about turnover-worthy plays. By the way, I didn't even pull up the QBR stat. Daniel Jones since week 4, and I hear a lot of stat heads talk about the QBR, and they were all talking about the QBR through 3 weeks when Daniel Jones ranked near bottom of the league. Since week 4, Daniel Jones has the highest QBR in the National Football League, and he's 6th overall after getting off to a horrible start in that statistical category. And we'll jump into who were the top 10 in QBR last year, and to show why people always talk about how that's a pretty accurate stat when judging quarterbacks. But we'll get into that in a minute. We'll go back to the turnover discussion that people talked about in the past. Daniel Jones right now has the second lowest interception percentage in the National Football League, only behind Tom Brady at 1.1%. He's also only fumbled, like I said earlier, 2 times all year, which only 2 quarterbacks have fumbled fewer that have started since the beginning of the year, that being Russell Wilson and Derek Carr, and both of them have played 1 fewer game because they've had a bye. In terms of the quarterbacks that were top 10 in QBR, the stat that Daniel Jones ranks the highest in the National Football League since week 4 and 6th overall last year, Aaron Rodgers, who won the MVP, Tom Brady, Justin Herbert, Matthew Stafford, who won the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray, who I think Daniel Jones is going to be better than sooner than later, Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz, and Russell Wilson. So that's a pretty accurate list. I mean, I think a lot of people would have argued that the majority of those guys, outside of probably Carson Wentz and maybe Kyler Murray last year, were top 10 quarterbacks. Daniel Jones is first in that stat since week 4, and he's 6th overall in the NFL right now, and that's only trending up, and he's gotten better each and every week. The other stat that I want to show you is progress. The Giants right now rank 18th in terms of third down conversion rate, but in the last 3 games, or 17th, as you see on the left, but in the last 3 games, they're converting 51.35% of the time as this offense continues to grow, and Daniel Jones has a lot to do with that, both with his arms and his legs, and they rank 4th in the league over that 3-game span, only behind the Cincinnati Bengals with Joe Burrow, the Kansas City Chiefs, obviously with Patrick Mahomes, and the San Francisco 49ers at 52.94%. The Giants check in at 51.35% in the last 3 games. So this offense and Daniel Jones have gotten better and better and better and better each week. And people are going to continue to hate on Daniel Jones, and I welcome it as a New York Giants fan, and I expect it as a New York Giants fan. I'm okay with it. But at the end of the day, hate him all you want, he's coming back in 2023. I guarantee it. Daniel Jones is coming back in 2023, and he is playing at a very high level. Stats or not, the most important stats to me, for him, game-winning drives, third down conversion rate, situational football, and he has a ton to do with why this New York Giants team is winning football games. I don't care the silly stats that Dan Orlovsky throws out there. Oh, it's because of Barkley. Oh, it's because of the coach. Oh, it's because of the defense. Yet all I ever hear is how quarterbacks influence wins more so than anything else. But for some reason, when Daniel Jones wins football games and this team wins football games and Jones has the most fourth-quarter comebacks and game-winning drives in the National Football League this year, he doesn't get any credit. Doesn't make much sense to me. And the more and more that people hate on Daniel Jones, the more and more I grow to love him. And the more and more that I'm beginning to believe in him. I'm not going to say it yet, but I'm getting close to putting my hat in for Daniel Jones in terms of the long-term answer for this football team. He's got the tools. He's got mobility. He's got the arm. He's got the accuracy. And now he's starting to get the confidence. Daniel Jones, over the first 3 years in his career, was in a Toyota Prius, and you were asking him to beat out guys that were running in Lamborghinis. He had one of the worst offensive lines in the sport. He had an offensive coordinator that was calling plays for the Flintstones in the Stone Age with Jason Garrett and Joe Judge. Now he's got a modern-day play caller, and all of a sudden, that's the new argument as well. People say, oh, well, it's the coaching. It has very little to do with Daniel Jones. It's all the coaching. But for some reason, when it comes to any other player on this team, people give credit to the player. Dexter Lawrence looks like a new player, right, guys? People are giving credit to Dexter Lawrence. They're acknowledging the coaching has something to do with it, but he's getting credit for his growth as a football player. He never looked like this before this year. People are giving credit to Julian Love. who never quite looked like this before this year. People are giving credit to Andrew Thomas, who never looked this good before this year. And I can name several other players, Jihad Ward, O'Shane Zimenez, so on and so forth. But for some reason, when it comes to Daniel Jones, people spin the argument towards, well, it's because of Dable. It's not because of Daniel Jones. No, it's because of Daniel Jones, as much as it is to do with the coaching staff. At the end of the day, he's still got to go out there and convert on 3rd and 14. He's still got to go out there and lead this team down the field each and every week. And thus far, he's been able to do it, and he's been able to do it at a very high level in a brand new offense, by the way, that he is still getting acclimated to, that he is still learning without any semblance of a wide receiving core. His number one wide receiver right now is either Darius Slayton or Wan'Dale Robinson. Look around the league and tell me a quarterback that has a worse top 2 wide receiving core than that. David Sills would not even be on the practice squad for half the teams in the league. Yet Daniel Jones is finding a way to get it done each and every week. Yeah, I understand he's not throwing for 300 yards every week. I understand that. Why in the world would you go away from your best and really only weapon in Saquon Barkley? Why in the world would you do that regardless of who the quarterback was? He's the best running back in football. And right now, his legs are the best weapon, and Daniel Jones' legs are probably the second best weapon because we got wide receivers who can't catch the football. You saw it this past week. We had 6 drops. Go out and get this guy, Devontae Smith. Go out and get this guy, A.J. Brown. Get him his wide receiver duo, and I promise you, Daniel Jones will look like a much better quarterback than he already is, and he already looks like a damn good one. Daniel Jones is going to continue to have doubters, and Daniel Jones, I believe, is going to continue to prove him wrong. And I can't wait to be here for it. As always, guys, if you liked what you watched, please subscribe. Drop a comment. Maybe give me a little thumbs up. Cheers.